Still no COT data, so we're on to the kind of just looking into the sort of futures and then the stocks. Futures, well, there's a fair few coming into the stand at the moment. Excuse me, and it's kind of an interesting one. I say this all the time. This OJ, look, OJ is very good. OJ has the season for OJ has been, has been very much selling. All right, it's been Stam 1S, but you can have, even in a season, all right, even in a rainy season, you can have a nice sunny day like like Saturday was here and stuff. So that can happen, and part of that can be just me being, is that a case of just the pump before the dump continues, or is that long-term downtrend coming to an end? Remember, the STAM is there to identify the strength of your weakness to give you an indication of where the strongest trends are. It's not there to identify turning points. Turning points come from your own analysis. Turning points coming from being consistent in your own analysis and basically in just invariably making sure you're doing analysis on a daily and weekly basis. That is where you start to get a sense for the market, a sense for where there might be turning points. Remember, the STAM is just there to give you an indication of where's the strength versus the weakness. But with that, we can see over the last week. Okay, if I look at the heat map for the last week, well, what we had seen is gold and silver having had a bit of a sell-off. They've actually had a bit of a bump. Silver's back up to 50. I think gold is back up above 4,100. All right, I think part of that is even with the US shutdown coming to a close, I think there are still people worried about the state of the US economy, and also maybe expecting more Federal Reserve cuts. All right, that's what I think people will be looking at. But it's kind of interesting because as you see that the VIX, which was high at the end of last week, all right, has pretty much collapsed, and you can see that on the VIX chart itself. Right, that is basically doing that. Over the last week, Bitcoin is also looking a bit green. That's because, as we talked about in the Monday market update, it dropped its way down to 100,000, but it's bounced off it, and has bounced kind of nicely off it. And you have to wonder if that kind of risk-on giddiness has returned to markets, how well will that benefit the Bitcoin going forward? Yeah, and if I just look at that in terms of my own heat map, what's of kind of interest to me is, when I look at those indices and commodities, okay, from September, we can see it was a bit thin in August, no surprise. September, into October is busy, but the interesting thing is that it's kind of thinning out, and what we are getting, are tactical shorts there across the board, and that's kind of interest to me. Okay, it's a sign that the sort of, it might well be the sort of kind of the tide has gone out before the tsunami arrives. We shall wait and see. But a pretty mixed picture. Okay, in the commodities themselves. All right, in terms of some being buying, some being selling, some of them being seasonality. And others, a reference to what's going on. Also, for example, no surprise that soybeans the last couple of weeks has flipped from being selling, okay, when invariably everyone was talking about there being no deal between the US and China. That is now gone into a buy environment because, of course, the Chinese are looking to buy soybeans from the Americans, or that's what Mr. Besant tells us.